Furniture is huge. Knowing what abilities and stats you need from it is crucial for endgame progress. And with so many abilities and meta changes recently, we should really update this tier list. Let's have an off-script talk about the research and endgame campaign shifts so you know your priorities are right. So this video is going to be divided into 3 segments, explaining the tier list first, making the updates for each bracket, and lastly placing the new heroes. So about the list, it has both +3 and +9 bonuses now color coded like you guys asked, so you guys can prioritize between them, taking into account that the +9s are more expensive. This way I hope you can make your better wish list knowing what heroes are worth the investment. I also note how Battles of Blood, the new mode, let us experiment with many niche +3s in a vacuum. So the list has 10 tiers. The tiers are the hero ranking, a hyphen, and then the furniture ranking. For example, this is going to be average furniture for those meta heroes. The only exception to this rule is going to be niche carving. These are heroes that fill 2 criteria. First is that their furniture sees meta usage, and second is that their furniture shapes their identity in the endgame. These are heroes that have to be completely different with and without their furniture. So right before we dive into the changes, there's a few heroes I want to mention. Cass's, his furniture got reworked, very nice, I'll pull it up on screen. The 3 has the old 9 effect in it, giving him flexibility, and AimB says the 9 doesn't work quite yet. Definitely has lots of potential, can get pretty tanky, not much investment. He can work decently with Flora, but just does not see change yet until we see some more endgame experimentation. Also, I want to talk quickly about Grezel. So Grezel finds counter magic damage use in the new mode. We still need to experiment with his furniture. The place where I assume he's easiest to fit, Tierlist Excel's Graveborn, has not been as prominent in campaign recently. Many new meta sets are pushing it down. I'm still keeping an eye on him, but no changes for now. Aaron is another very strong hero that we should talk about. Aaron, I'd consider bumping it up, but the +3 increases chance for a 50% ability to proc. New campaign makes it so that you can just retry the stage, a little more to him. Like, even if you lose, you can just retry the same stage without going all the way for the same result. So I find it hard to justify his +3 is absolutely required, but definitely a hero that's pushing it up there with his power overall. Very lastly, extremely fun hero. Since his rework, he counters invades very good, and you'd say Linker, if he's slept on and you love him and he sees endgame campaign usage, why wouldn't you bump him just a little bit up there to those average heroes? But no, the replay data indicates it's not enough, and endgame players say he isn't obvious to fit everywhere. Now having that said, let's just jump right onto the changes, starting from those underwhelming heroes. I don't think I want to change anything here really within the bracket. It's just some heroes are too good to really stay here. Like for example, Satrana. Satrana has seen more endgame usage, and when I see her I just know I want to bump both of those right to average. She has to move up with the amount of usage CCs, with the counter heal, with the rework, just a stronger hero than we thought. Really good, and I'd love to see it. If you invest in Satrana early, you won't regret it as much late. Brutus is another one I personally love to experiment with. His 3 has to move to good for average. Extending the duration with no requirement is really strong, especially with the sets he goes in, like Damon and Gwyneth really appreciate the extra consistency. Also, the 9 has to move up to average, but it's still underwhelming because it relies on him surviving last. It's just not the style. He's not a carry hero. He supports other heroes. So Brutus 3 pretty much worth the investment, but the 9 probably not. Also, Titus. Titus, I don't know what he's doing over here, guys. I don't know what I was thinking. Just a really strong hero in those Aaron sets. We also recently see him make the cut into some Screg endgame sets, so he can flex as a hyper carry. Very strong hero, both the 3 and the 9 move up 3 tiers. He maintains those rankings. Just the hero overall is an average hero, definitely not an underwhelming hero. Maybe in the future he might even push it a little further to the meta. Definitely doesn't belong in underwhelming. And looking at that here, I think I'm pretty happy with the underwhelming bracket. Some heroes to keep an eye for, maybe Rigby, maybe Draz, I don't even know, maybe Theo. But I'm gonna move forward to the most relevant bracket. It has to be the average heroes. So many average heroes. Those are the heroes that you'll see many people consider getting into their wish list. So let's talk about them. Firstly, Cecilia. Cecilia 9, it's mistranslated, so we know that it does the two swords in the same time. Just terrible, terrible translation. And I hear that in the very end game with Scrag, she can be very, very strong. It makes a big difference in Scrag sets, the double ulti, much more damage. So just the 9 is going to move up to average for average heroes, stronger than we thought it is, and not as punishing. SEO 3 and 9 both have to move up. SEO 3 is mistranslated. So this is one thing that Breika discovered with experimentation. The way it works is that if he can do the kill, if he can leap, if he can go ahead for his ult, he will cleanse CC, meaning it works on stuns, it works on Tassie banishes, works on anything. It cleanses all kinds of CC, giving him very good value at that low price point. And also, SEO 9 also has to jump up all the way to average for meta heroes. Just a very good hero in the end game. We see him working, especially since new campaign allows you to retry. So those dodge tanks are much better. You can retry until you get the right sets of dodges, and when he does, it can really spell out. So those volatile heroes really rewarded with new campaign. So I have to push up this guys up, especially since the new dimensional sets with Albedo, with Ainz, really make him much more stronger and much more prominent and easy to fit. Isolde also has to jump for average for meta. We just see Isolde used everywhere, and with the new hero that we'll talk about in just a second down here, you'll see that Isolde is much more prominent than he used to be. Very strong hero, the 9 justifies the investment. Hard to push him up there in the requirement because he can be substituted, he's not 100% consistent, but a strong hero, volatile hero, definitely one that enjoys the recent changes and the recent newer introductions that we will talk about. Good return on investment on the 9. M'Saath has to be bumped up to meta. Furniture is still bad furniture, doesn't do much in campaign, don't like to see it too much, but M'Saath himself as a hero is just a very good hero. You can slap him whenever you need to tank, very easy to use, very good to use. Love to see him in those endgame replays. Thorin, and I hate to do this, new furniture buff, campaign change buffs him. They're the 9 used in defense sets, and usage stats are hard to deny. His 3 increases defensive usage, healing him for stuns, and recovers energy points after the one-time resurrection that he does. Believe me, I'm sad saying this, but he's used for cheese across all meta. The defensive use is less consistent. I love it as an average hero, but what makes him a meta hero is going to be the cheese. I hate it, I avoid using it, but that's how it is. So because of that, the 3 buff doesn't matter much. The drawing isn't big, the placing the 3 is underwhelming. Right here, just taking 1 bump. The reason is that he just doesn't see that much use defensively. The 9 sadly jumping all the way to average. I hate doing this, but I gotta be accurate for you guys, and you guys know it. Now let's move on to happier topics. The most impactful changes have to be the ones for the meta and niche carving furniture. So Flora 3. Flora 3 is a special case. It's more effective than some people would think. 6 points of haste across the fields for every 1 piece of furniture makes a difference. It's much cheaper than 9. That's a misconception many people have. It works. You see her used with defensive Thorin, just like we'll see sometimes with offensive Thorin. I hate that. But very strong hero. While the 9 might seem deceptively effective, this is where you want her. The 3 is very strong. Nora is also one. Nora 3 has to move for average for meta. Reason is the CC is very prominent. She's a common hero to fit, counter hero very strong, can clutch sometimes aggressive carryless replays. The 9 counteracts with a signature item because the signature item makes her go above the threshold. The 9 wants it to be below the threshold. It sounds better than it is, but the 3 really easy to use, grants her extra CC that's very strong, has to place her in 3 granting her a new type of CC and usage. Next, Lorsan. Lorsan, this makes me sad, guys. I fought hard for Lorsan, believe me, but he has to move down 3 tiers. Just the usage stats. I love this bunny. Every one of you that watches my channel for a while knows that I love this guy. I fit him everywhere. I love to see how he's used. He's so fun in burst campaign. Just the usage stats suggest that there's just too many substitutes for him to justify this high tier positioning. Estrilda is also gonna move down all the way, and the reason for that is that she also finds many substitutes. Hendrik, for example, substitutes her fairly well. We see him and her at least equal, if not even slightly giving him the edge. Same is obviously gonna go for her 9. The furniture is not very good, and the hero itself can be substituted. Still a very strong hero nonetheless. Signature item very strong, but does not justify the end-all be-all meta positioning that says invest right into this hero. And Odin 3 is gonna suffer a big descent. It buffs only himself, so in the past I was saying, look, he buffs himself, he kind of spirals out. That's not the way he's used. If you want to use Odin in campaign, you need his 9. That buffs allies, that's what makes him really, really strong. So because of this, the Odin 3 is gonna drop down all the way to average for average, just does not justify it on its own. If you want to use Odin like that, spend all the way. If you don't, then you'll be fine. The 3 itself does not do enough. And now for the part that I know you're all waiting for, these are the new heroes. Lots of meta changes since the last tier list, good to update it. Iron 3 has to go to average for meta heroes. It can even push higher than that. Reason it is not as crucial as his 9, most damage is in the ult, but allows him to really spiral out with the basic attack damage. While he is used for ult carries, the basic attack damage and even the CC is really worth it, so you won't regret pushing it. It might even be pushed even higher if you use him for DPS alongside other carries. Ainz 9 is another one that finds himself right in this tier. It's very strong. It costs more, but it's very strong. Makes the goal of all life is death proc 9 seconds earlier. Makes a big difference. 9 seconds, a whole bunch of ultimates. Very strong hero, might become required for meta even at that 9 price point just because of the sheer value that you can get out of it. Reducing enemies' health very fast and ulting right after that, wiping enemies potentially much faster. Next, Albedo 3 and 9 are both going to be underwhelming for meta heroes. That's going to be because of the way that they interact right now and just how hard they are to proc. So the thing is with Albedo 3 and 9 is that she goes on the highest attack and usually just going to be the carry, and once they die you lost anyways. So while I have seen some Daemon sets where he's the carry and he isn't the highest attack, and maybe some niche carries like Thane can make it work, in endgame campaign meta most replays would indicate that the furniture is not what makes her crucial. 9 is the same story. The 3 is a much stronger abilities with the protection. 9 gives her the health regeneration, making her more tanky. But if you can proc it for the 3, you definitely find it hard to proc for the 9. Maybe with some experimentation or new heroes introduced, maybe we'll find a spot for her. But right now, the furniture is not what you want on her. You really want the signature item. That's up to our testing, even though the theory crafting indicated otherwise. Now, Peepa is a very volatile hero. People place her all around this tier list. I've heard the cases for anything and everything, but I'm gonna put her actually the 3 exactly in the middle. Not much survivability, and she can be used for RNG without it. Look, the 3 modifies the ults, kind of makes them stronger. Go read it if you'd like, but just sometimes you want her to do the different ults. The 3 makes her ult the same ult every time, and sometimes you really want her to clutch it. He's the identity of the RNG hero, and while it is pretty good, it's not game changing. She's an average hero, might push it up later, but right now the 3 is not what makes the big difference. The signature item on her is very strong. And for the Peepa 9, that has to be good for average. And let me explain this, because many people are saying, look, Peepa is a bad Tassie, she doesn't teleport, and you probably don't use her as a solo carry, but just look at these numbers, just look at the Peepa numbers. The attack increased by 10% on 80 energy, 12 times. That's very strong. Will probably be discovered in the future. 120% attack if you do many ults. Maybe that's God Comp material. Maybe that's some Hypogean material. I don't know. We really need to experiment with her to discover, but I can't avoid the thought that the 9 stats are just too strong to make her a solid side carry that you won't regret investing into if you're going for those average heroes and you want a good piece of furniture. Silas 3. Now, Silas 3 has to be niche carving, and if we saw Odin 3 falling down, this is the great one that comes to replace him. The reason is, just look at those numbers again. 50%, 30%, this buff is huge. It adds to his healing and counter healing niche, a completely different niche. He then becomes a buffer, a big buffer. He doesn't just give immunity, he gives stats, attack speed. This makes him very strong with those melee heroes like Isolde, like Talene, other heroes that already enjoy much his healing buffs. This makes him so much more prominent, and I believe this piece of furniture, just the 3, can make him clutch things that he otherwise just would not do. Silas 9 for me is underwhelming, and the reason that it's underwhelming is that I think he will be meta. This is a bet. Some people say it's going to be average. I'm going to bet that he will be meta with Isolde eventually. Ranged heroes can be possibly very strong. You see, with Zafrael, for example, I can see the 9 power level being very high. But the issue with it, I would just not invest in it. You could do him with melee heroes and he'll be perfectly fine. The Silas 9 could be possibly very strong, but most endgame campaign sets will not require it. He can go on those melee allies like Isolt, shout out to Zaf, but still does not justify this much investment usually. Lucretia 3. Lucretia 3 for me is a pretty contested one, especially with the campaign changes. People would say, oh, this is going to be way up there, but she goes in average for average. Look, with the new meta, she's volatile. Maybe Lucretia Cheese will become meta. We don't see it in the replays right now. We see Thor and Cheese being consistent. So in campaign, you can retry lots. You'd say those volatile heroes like Lucretia succeed. We don't see it yet. When we will, I'll bump her up, but I just can't do it without the data supporting it. She's stall-oriented with her furniture, which makes her really much slower than she would otherwise be. And the 3 procs decently, the 9 just takes too long, so I have to put it on underwhelming for average heroes. Look how large this tier list is getting. Leslie Zaf, the 3 is going to be underwhelming for meta heroes. And some people will contest it. They'll say, what? I see Zaf used all the time. Why I see Zaf used nowhere. That's really up to where you are. But in the very endgame campaign, we can confirm he is used all the time. Chapter 35 and North, he sees usage in some Gwyn sets. He sees usage in some Screg sets. He's very strong. But the thing is, the 0.5 stun is not strong enough to justify picking him. He's not good enough with that. He just dies. He dives and dies right away. So if you're investing him in the 3, he's gonna be underwhelming. What's very strong is the 9. And I'm gonna put it in the contested required for meta alongside the Tali 9 and that much investment. But the thing is, we see him in most of all replays. Despite being a Celis hypo, despite taking the investment, he can make things so much more consistent. 2-second stun makes him significantly higher than that. Sees usage in almost every chapter 35 and onward replay with Screg, with Gwyneth, with so many others. So just a very strong heroes overall. I think the map is drawn out. I think we see lots of campaign changes. I think we see the new heroes introduce new metas. For example, the Dimensionals and Albedo making Ezio stronger. We see all these interactions, different heroes brought to the forefront. But I really wanted to put this out for you, especially with all the new data we have, so you know what you want to do, so you can build a wish list. And while wish lists are not end all be all, look, I've seen those Mad Solace 9 replays that overtake some of these heroes in the average brackets. Tier lists are not the end all be all. Sometimes just going into your Solis, that's not the highest rank hero, can really be incredible. And with the new mode, we see some of them definitely do. We have people that really show off with Thane sometimes, I don't know, Gritty shout out. But really, what you need to know from these tier lists is that for general guideline purposes, the endgame meta is going to be somewhere here. So making your wish list based off of that and understanding different synergies and planning ahead is what's going to really drive you forward. And on that note, I hope this helped you out. Like and subscribe. It matters a lot to me, guys. You can't even tell. Growth is huge, approaching 3K, which is unfathomable to me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think below. And I've been Linker. Peace.